So last week we were in the Gospel of Matthew. Paula preached passionately about Jesus walking on the water, and Jesus was kind of in his home territory, and the focus was really on his people. And he spoke about Peter coming out of the boat, having a little bit of faith. Now today, the kind of Gospel of Matthew turns, and we move really from the Jewish world kind of into, Gentile territory, what might be thought of as enemy territory. And Jesus is going to meet the other. He is going to, like the football player and the coach, meeting someone who comes from a very different background. And she's a woman too. And so Jesus is going to be challenged in this passage. And it's hard to tell if Jesus is sort of using the woman as a trope and sort of showing us in a mirror around kind of racism and smallness, or if he's really challenged and stretched, sort of like Jacob wrestling with God, or Moses in a either way we see again and again that we grow and we're transformed when we step out and risk being with new people and new situations. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon, to be like modern day Syria. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But Jesus did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." Jesus answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But the woman came and knelt before him. I mean, this is the suffragist, right? She's not taken no for an answer. "Lord, help me." And Jesus answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." And she said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." So she's the only person who kind of wins an argument with Jesus in the scripture. Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. So Nathan Connor lost his job in March when his manufacturing plant in Milwaukee closed down. And he applied for unemployment along with 56 million Americans. And 19 weeks later, he hasn't received an answer or any benefits. And as of last week, he was living in a rundown motel with his daughter, and his little savings he had left was almost gone, and he wasn't unsure where they would move to. And through the whole thing, he's been clear that his concern is his 6-year-old daughter. He's a single parent. He's skipping meals so that she won't have to. He's trying to be careful to maintain a positive attitude, to put the whole situation in an educational context, because he says she's a very astute child. He's doing everything he can to provide this nurturing, rich environment. When they can, they're working on first grade Spanish, and he's been trying to pull together some kind of pandemic pod too, of other families who can help him teach his child, who he can pair with as well, because he's concerned about sending his own daughter back to school. And at the end of the interview, he said again, "What I care about is my child. She's just a kid trying to be sure that she has a childhood." That really shouldn't be too much to ask in a country like ours, right? But in a country like ours, 1 in 5 children are hungry or face food insecurity. And in an African-American family like Nathan's, it's 1 in 4. And you see the bills that have been passed, you see the priorities of the legislatures, and you think, how can it be that we can cut taxes on the wealthiest people in this country and we can't fund preschool? We can't fund enrichment programs. We can't see that all children in this country have internet and air conditioning and are able to thrive and grow. And the only thing that you can really finally come down to is this: some people don't see kids as kids. That's just really, honestly, odd and crazy as it is, the truth. The average American, the average white American, overestimates the age of a Black boy by 4 to 5 years. They see an 8-year-old boy, Black boy, as 12 or 13. A 12-year-old boy is 16 or 17. And that means you discipline a 16, 17-year-old different than a 12-year-old. When Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old in Cleveland, was shot by the police who called it in said, "Black male, about 20, down on the ground." He was 12. When George Zimmerman, 28, shot Trayvon Martin, who was 17, who walked by his house, he said, we're about the same age. And it's the same for little Black girls too. White Americans consistently see Black girls as more mature and more developed than they are. They see them as knowing more about sex, more about adult topics. They see them as needing less protection, less nurture, less comfort. It's just this bizarre thing where some kids just aren't seen as kids. And really, that's kind of how it's been in this country forever, right? I mean, you think about slave times. How could a child be taken from its mother and sold unless you didn't see that child as a child, right? Robin Bernstein, who teaches African American studies at Harvard, has written about this extensively. He's written about how young people and how especially young Black people have been portrayed in theater and cartoons and advertisements. And the basic stereotype of a Black child in the late 1800s and moving into the 1900s was the pickaninny, the little child that's dirty and filthy and disobedient, and the hair's going everywhere and their clothes are torn. And the little Black girls on the minstrel shows would be portrayed by white women wearing blackface. And they'd come out on the stage and it'd be the same trope over and over again. They're running after the fried chicken, the watermelon, they're disobeying, and then they're beaten. And in these plays, the more they're beaten, the more they laugh, and the more they encourage other people to laugh. I mean, this was over and over and over the way Black children were portrayed as impervious to pain, as not vulnerable at all, not anyone that needed to be protected. But, to be fair, Americans didn't invent this kind of dismissing and devaluing of other people's children. I mean, you see it all across the board in war situations. And you even see it oddly today as Jesus encounters this Canaanite woman. He's in enemy territory. The Canaanites and the Jews have long been at each other. She sees him and she cries out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on my child possessed by a demon." Now, that's a lament psalm, and a lament is a demand. She is demanding that Jesus step up and do something. And you know what he does? He doesn't do anything. It says he answered her not at all. And then his disciples say, "Send that woman away. She is irritating us." It's like, I really don't want to see these homeless people at the end of the street. Could you please clear them out? And then Jesus says, I was only sent to the house of Israel. And that woman, she says to him, "Lord, help me." She doesn't care. He can diss her. He can push her away. She says, "Lord, help me." And then he responds, "It is not right to give the children's bread to the dogs." He's calling her a dog. He's calling her child a dog. Now, some New Testament writers, they go back and try to say, well, maybe the Greek is really puppy. He's calling her a dog. And that woman, she responds, "Even the dogs eat from the master's table." Right? She zings him. And then Jesus responds, "Blessed are you, O woman of great faith. It will be done to you as you want." And her child was instantly healed. She wins, right? She doesn't care about winning. She cares about her child. She wants to see that her child has what her child needs: protection and care and healing. Oh my goodness, there has been so much conversation in the last few months about our children and how to return them to school safely. And it is so complicated. I mean, for one thing, there are the needs of children who are privileged and who do have the benefit of a parent at home, or a parent who can team with other parents, have income, have Wi-Fi, have air conditioning. You've got other kids who don't have any of that, who don't have food, who don't have a parent at home. And you've got kids who are specially abled or disabled and different, and how can they learn at home? And the whole thing, of course, is then, well, if you do send the kids back to school, even the most vulnerable kids, and they get sick and they come home and they make grandma and grandpa sick, or mom and dad die, I mean, that's worse surely than losing a year of school. It is so incredibly complicated. And I look out at our Peace family. We're disproportionately, we have an awful lot of teachers and educators and administrators. And I mean, it is just remarkable how people are giving their lives to try to do every single thing they can for our kids. And then there are people who want to open up the school because they want to open up the economy, right? Because kids are being used as pawns, because all they care about is the bottom line. They don't care about providing and making sure that kids and administrators are safe. It's not just little ones though, right? It goes all the way up to our college kids, our college level, our administrators like Alex and Christy struggling with this. And of course, one of the things that's been in the news so much, college football. Do we play college football or do we not play college football? Again, it's complicated. Not like every kid on the college football teams, other choices being at home in a safe area with everything going right. And you've got the issue, of course, that college football, long before the pandemic, was a controversial topic for good reason. The injuries, the dangers to students, exploitation, especially of Black athletes who rake in sometimes millions and millions and millions of money for the school and of course struggle so much just to get by. And you know, obviously if you follow the news at all with Black Lives Matter as well as COVID, you've seen football players flexing their muscle, right? And saying, we're going to unionize, we're going to speak up, it's just so complicated. Some of them want to play, then the next day they don't want to. It's just, what do we do and how do we do it? And the truth is, while you don't want to say, well, back to the good old days, but life didn't used to be, well, it didn't used to be run so much by money. My parents went to TCU in the 1950s when Bob Lilly played for TCU. If you grew up in Texas, Bob Lilly's a household name. He played for the Dallas Cowboys for 14 years. Before that, he played for TCU, and he grew up in Throckmorton, kind of west of Texas, west of Fort Worth. And Abe Martin was the legendary coach, and he took a penny postcard, could get a penny postcard, and he wrote a note on it, sent it to Bob Lilly and said, you should come down here and play football at TCU. Bob Lilly hitchhiked, didn't have the money, hitchhiked to TCU. Abe Martin took him around, then he hitchhiked back. He was recruited for a penny, right? That's not how it's done anymore. We know a lot of stuff, a lot of corruption, a lot of things, and it's still the truth, right? That sports change kids' lives. If it weren't the case, you wouldn't have 75% of American kids playing on some team. And you wouldn't have people like my soon to be 90-year-old dad, who will still tell you that playing high school football at Lake Worth, that Coach Crean changed his life. It is all so complicated. Gary Pinkel is arguably the greatest football coach MU ever had. He has the winningest record. For years, there was talk about building a statue on the campus. When he came there in 2001, they were coming off 17 seasons in which they had won. They had had 2 winning seasons in 17 years. They'd lose to Nebraska and Oklahoma, 72-0, that kind of thing. And when he got there, one of the things Coach Pinkel realized is he could not win without recruiting from St. Louis. And MU wasn't recruiting well from St. Louis because in St. Louis, MU was seen as such a racist place, such a place unwelcoming to Black students and Black athletes. And so Gary Pinkel went over to St. Louis and he started meeting with players, ex-players, alums, and he had a big meeting, 100, 125 in a big hotel room. And he asked people to tell him about his experience. And he listened and he heard. And it was painful and it was raw and it was real and it was heated. And he made pledges. He made pledges about the days of going over to East St. Louis and sitting down in some kid's house where there wasn't a stick of furniture and somebody had to bring a lawn chair in so he could sign. And then the coach making promises about how he's going to help the kid graduate and yada, yada. No. He had to change. He had to admit the program needed to be different. He started by really honestly engaging the students and the coaches from the toughest parts of St. Louis and hearing what the students needed, started centering the students. And he had, sadly, one of the early challenges in his career, 2005, Aaron O'Neal, a player from St. Louis, tragically died during summer football practices. At first, they thought it might have been meningitis, the heat. Later on, it was determined that it was brought on in part by sickle cell anemia that was undiagnosed, which can make physical exertion more difficult. And that experience Coach Pinkel talks about changed his life. I mean, before, these students, these athletes, their lives, their health, their development, that's what matters. So MU went before the NCAA, kind of instituted like mandatory screening for sickle cell. And then any of you who have really lived in the Kansas City area for a while or follow, even if you don't follow college football, most of you remember in 2013 when MU became the very first college football program, big football program, to have a student come out of the closet, Michael Sam. And Michael Sam didn't just come out of the closet because it was the thing to do. He came out of the closet because Coach Pinkel and the other coaches had created an environment where the students were expected to respect and care for one another and be real with one another. And how that happened was not just in a big team meeting. It was early in like August or so that year where Sam was a senior, and they'd have these dinners at a coach's house with 14 students. And they were position players who normally didn't play with one another. And the coach would lead off by telling about the coach's life. You know, I'm Gary Pinkel. I'm from Akron, Ohio. I don't know if he talked about his DUI in 2012 or 2011, or if he talked about his divorce. That was sort of nasty and publicized. But the coach would lead off telling real stuff about their life so that the students, many who had been through a lot, could share openly. Like Michael Sam, who was from Hitchcock, Texas, who had 2 brothers in prison, who was shot and who was maced by the police once when they came to arrest one of the brothers. He'd had a sister die at 4, so that Michael Sam could say, big, tough football player, and I'm gay. And if you want to feel proud of the Show Me State, and some days we need anything we can do, you should Google Gary Pinkel's interviews with the press. First, they let Michael Sam decide how and when he wanted to share that news, protecting his vulnerability, seeing him as a human being, not somebody to make money off of. Michael Sam decided he wanted to wait till the end of the year, wait till after the bowl season. And Michael Sam came out with the love and admiration and respect of his teammates and his coach. And Gary Pinkel, who is not known for being a good person to give an interview, he probably uses the word respect and love and trust and appreciation for Michael Sam, and it is so genuine. And if you think every coach in the SEC would have responded that way, well, then you don't follow college football, right? And it wasn't just that. Of course, 2 years later, MU was again in the national headlines, not in a good way, because of racist incidents on the campus, because of slurs, because of swastikas. Started in September. Tim Wolf, the college president, not responsive. I remember the football, the homecoming parade. My husband, who's an MU law grad, the president of the school wouldn't get out of the car in the parade to, speak to the students, Black students, others and allied with them. And I remember Joe walking around the house saying, just get out of the car, just get out of the car, just speak to the students, just be a human being, just see that they're human beings. But he wouldn't. And so on a Monday, November 3rd, Jonathan Butler, a graduate student, started a hunger strike. Said he wouldn't eat until the president of the university resigned. And on that Saturday, the MU football team decided they would boycott. They wouldn't play the following Saturday at Arrowhead, where the college was going to get $1 million for playing BYU. And that night, Gary Pinkel tweeted a picture of the football team, and he said this: "The Mizzou family stands as one. We are united. We are behind our players." And the next morning, they put out a statement. Today, Sunday, there will be no football practice or formal team activities. Our focus right now is on the health of Jonathan Butler, the concerns of our student athletes, and working with our community to address the serious issue. After meeting with the team this morning, it is clear they do not plan to return to practice until Jonathan resumes eating. We are continuing to have department campus student meetings as we work through this issue. If you don't think Coach Pinkel was attacked by legislators in Jefferson City and social media, the racism and the hate and everything that he encountered, he became the flashpoint for it, not the 30 players who initiated the boycott. But the next day, Tim Wolf resigned, right? And as if not to rock the week even further, that Friday night, Gary Pinkel announced that he would be resigning too. Evidently, a decision he had made earlier in the year when he had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Decision he had planned to wait and share after the season, but that had been leaked. But you wonder if there wasn't something in that vulnerability of the students that also allowed Gary Pinkel to see, you know what, I may be a tough guy, I don't want to work 80 hours a week for the time I have left. Sometimes it's all complicated, except when it isn't. I think about what Mr. Rogers said, that when it comes to our kids, the question is not, what can we sell them? The question is, who are they? That is the question. Whether it's a preschooler or a football player weighs 300 pounds, whether it's a linebacker in the NFL, whether it's my lover, my partner, whether it's my parent, my kid, whether it's the homeless, the person made homeless. It doesn't matter. The question is not, what can I get out of you? How can I use you? How can I exploit you? How can I dominate you? The question is, who are you? Show me who you are, right? So that we can grow together, so that we can love together. I mean, the question is really, do you go through the world, exploiting and abusing, or loving and protecting? May the courage of all of those people who have gone before, who have risked everything to be honest, to love, and to care, inspire us to do the same. Amen.